Hello and welcome back to the channel where once again it's time for another Sega Saturn review, with us today taking a look at another light gun game in the systems library in the form of Maximum Force, a sequel of sorts to Area 51 that first saw release in the arcades in February of 1997 before first coming out on the Saturn in October of 1997 in North America before getting a power release in March of 1998, making it one of the last games in the region and also now one of the most valuable as well. It's worth noting it didn't get released in Japan on the Saturn, but it did also come out on the PC and the PlayStation. So with Atari having a little bit of success with Area 51, even though it wasn't particularly well received by critics, it did perform quite well in terms of sales. They thought they'd bang out another light gun game in the form of Maximum Force, pretty much following the same formula as Area 51. Like always, I'll be talking about what it looks like, what it sounds like, how it plays, content and lifespan, and ultimately whether it's still worth playing today and has the quality to make our PAL or even our worldwide Saturn Top 10. So once the main menu comes around and you press start, you'll simply see you've got a choice of start or options, and heading into options, you can change the difficulty, choose the number of lives that you start with, choose mono or stereo sound, change the volume for both the sound effects and the music, and also configure your controller. If you're using a light gun, I would strongly recommend calibrating it because you will need to be as accurate as you can in this game because the bullet size of your standard gun is actually very small, so you do need to be pretty accurate with all of your shots. Once you've pressed start, you'll see you've got a choice of 3 missions, but only mission 1 and 2 are selectable to start with. You need to finish both of these to gain access to the 3rd mission. So like always, I'm going to start with the visuals first, and the very first thing that you will notice when you start playing the game is the incredibly chunky border that goes around the whole entire screen, which drastically reduces the visual play area. As well as the screen size being reduced, it also slightly affects the way the game plays, but I'll talk a little bit more about that when I cover the gameplay. In regards to the quality of the visuals, with the game being a full motion video based light gun game with digitized sprites, it undoubtedly looked dated for late 1997/early 1998, with several older light gun games on the market such as the Virtua Cops and Time Crisis looking considerably better. Whilst the video quality is somewhat grainy overall, it is of an acceptable level in regards to playing the game, and everything is still relatively clear and easy to see. One positive point is the fact that the digitized sprites actually blend in very well with the backgrounds rather than looking like they've been cut out and stuck on, which can sometimes be the case when games go down this route in regards to the sprite work. In regards to the visual variety, you do travel through various locations as you progress through the 3 missions, including a cargo ship, an underwater minefield, a nuclear assembly plant, a bank, and a jungle, which means there is a little bit of variation throughout the game, with the only major drawback being the fact that the levels pan out exactly the same every time you play the game, as there are no alternative routes that you can take, meaning the game does get quite repetitive visually relatively quickly. There are a couple more positive points, however, with the game having plenty of destructive scenery throughout each area and the performance of the game being absolutely fine from start to finish. Moving on to the sound effects and music, and the game actually performs pretty well in this area as the game is full of decent quality sound effects as you move through each area, gunning down hordes of enemies, blowing up scenery, or even shooting the innocent and sometimes scantily clad female bystanders as they let out an ear-bending shriek when you do so. Due to the weapon upgrades that you can collect, you do get a little bit of variation in regards to weapon noises too, something that Chaos Control, another Saturn light gun game that I've previously reviewed, sorely lacked. In regards to the quality of the music, whilst it's by no means memorable in any way, shape or form, it actually does add a reasonable amount of suspense and tension to the game as you play through it, which actually came as somewhat of a positive surprise to myself. And like always, I've got some samples of the music gimmick that you will find within the game. In regards to the gameplay, it's your typical light gun affair as you gun down wave after wave of bad guys as you try and complete the 3 missions that the game has to offer. There are no choices whatsoever in the game in regards to the paths that you can take, as you simply follow a predetermined course every time you play the game. As well as your standard gun that holds 8 rounds, you can upgrade to a shotgun or a machine gun if you shoot the designated ammo symbol whenever it appears on the screen, with the shotgun covering a larger area than your standard bullets and the machine gun enabling you to have rapid fire by holding down the trigger on the light gun. Take into account though, you will lose your power-ups if you're hit by an enemy or if you shoot one of the innocent bystanders. The HUD display at the bottom of the screen shows your current weapon as the ammo symbol changes dependent on the gun that you currently have, with your number of lives and credits also displayed on screen too. Whilst the flow of the game is exactly the same every time you play it, you can access secret rooms by shooting different parts of the scenery, which do provide a minor variation from the standard gameplay, as you'll be given unlimited ammo and a short amount of time to shoot as many of the targets as possible, whichever minigame you're taking part in. Some will have you shooting sharks that are chasing women as they swim, whereas others will be much more akin to the kind of games you'd expect to find at a fairground. Unfortunately though, they don't really add anything to the enjoyment level of the game, and if anything at all, are slightly more annoying than anything else as they actually disrupt the flow of the game. One thing I definitely do need to mention in regards to gameplay is the fact that with the standard gun, your shots do need to be pretty accurate because of the relatively small bullet size, coupled with the screen size for the game being quite small due to the huge border, meaning that some people will probably find the game much more difficult than others. But of course you do have the option of lowering the difficulty and also increasing your number of lives via the option menu. And in summary, whilst Maximum Force offers absolutely nothing new to the light gun genre, it is still a relatively enjoyable game to play through, certainly at least once anyway. So moving on to content and lifespan, and each of the 3 missions is broken up into several different sections, with each mission taking around about 10 minutes to play through, meaning the game can be played through in just over 30 minutes. The game has no ending sequence, and once you finish the 3rd mission, you're simply taken back to the mission selection screen with your remaining number of credits and the option to just carry on playing through the same missions again. And with the game having no alternative routes at all, you guessed it, it gets incredibly repetitive very quickly, similar to games like Area 51 and Chaos Control. What you can do though is input a code on the option screen to unlock arcade mode, but after playing through the standard mode and the arcade mode one after the other, I didn't actually notice any difference in the game, which was somewhat baffling, and with the instruction manual not making any reference to this whatsoever, it actually remains somewhat of a mystery. So if you actually do know what the differences are, please let me know with a comment down below. The game is undeniably more enjoyable in 2-player mode, but even then, once you play through it once, it's very unlikely you'll want to go back and revisit it, as the only incentive at all to replay the game is trying to better your high scores, meaning in terms of content and lifespan, Maximum Force is, like many other light gun games from the era, pretty underwhelming. I thought I'd treat everybody this week and show you some Saturn footage of the game side by side with some PlayStation footage, just so you can see how big of a difference that screen size makes on the PlayStation, because it makes everything slightly bigger, it makes the game easier to play as well, and actually the PlayStation version does run a little bit smoother as well. So if you were desperate to play this game, I would probably recommend the PlayStation version. And like always, that leaves me with my two final questions. Is Maximum Force still worth playing nowadays? And does it have the quality to make our Saturn PAL Top 10 or our worldwide Top 10, or maybe even both? Well, it's a very similar story to Area 51, simply because it's basically a follow-up game to that, with the game being relatively enjoyable for a single playthrough, both in single or multiplayer, but definitely not the kind of game you're going to get prolonged enjoyment from due to its very limited replay value. In regards to Maximum Force getting into either of our top 10s, of course the answer is no, as just like many other light gun games, it seriously lacks depth and replay value to be anywhere near the best games on the system. But of course, like always, these are just my thoughts and my thoughts alone, and like always, I'm interested in hearing everybody else's opinions on the game down below. Did you get it when it came out? Do you still own a physical copy of the Saturn version? As with it being a much later game on the system, it is indeed one of the most expensive PAL games that you can buy these days. Or did you pick up the much more common PlayStation version? Let me know your thoughts down below. And like always, I'll be back in the near future with another Saturn review. Goodbye for now.